things are going to change.
Philip does like to look after us,
He does.
doesn't he?
Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much.
Time now, 16 minutes past 7. Up to a third of teenagers have sex before they reach the age of 16. This is according to official figures. Today, there are calls for the government to consider lowering the legal age of consent.
The President of the Faculty of Public Health, Professor John Ashton, says society currently sends confused signals about when sex is permitted. And Professor Ashton joins us now. So,
welcome.
Why do we need to have this debate, in your opinion?
Well, we're in a bit of a mess, really, here. We've got increasing numbers of under 16s are having sex, particularly 14, 15-year-olds. This is driven in part by earlier puberty. I mean, puberty is much earlier now than it was even a generation ago. But it's also being driven by commercial exploitation. There's been quite a lot in the press recently about that, about pop songs, about clothing, about the pornography, and the social media are driving a lot of what's going on. We don't really know the full extent of sexual behaviour. There'll be another report out in a few weeks' time, which is 10 years since the last one. But other kinds of sexual behaviour, including oral sex, seems becoming very common among younger teenagers. We need to have a much better debate about what's going on. Many other European countries have lower ages of consent. I mean, Denmark and Sweden particularly have 15 as an age of consent. The point I'm making, really, and I'm not saying we should have an age of consent of 15, I'm saying we need a proper debate about this. But if we did have 15, for example, we could probably draw a line in the sand and have a very clear message about the undesirability of sex under 15, and we could respond more helpfully and supportively with young people to negotiate those first sexual relationships and to protect them against the older males that we hear so much about in the press as well, who've been, leading young girls on and so on.
We've asked our viewers to get in touch, and many have. Yeah. It's obviously a subject that's going to spark a lot of debate.
Yeah, sure.
Sarah Lee on Facebook says, just because they are doing it doesn't make it right. We have one of the highest teenage pregnancy rates of any country. If you give children the green light, and they are children, for a lower age of consent, she says she thinks the problem will get out of hand. This is quite typical of some of the views we're getting.
And it's not true. The countries that have a more open attitude towards teenage sexuality, and in fact some of the countries that have lower ages of consent, the young people get involved in sex later, and they also have much lower teenage pregnancy rates. The problem we have in this country is that we still have this kind of fantasy about young people, and we live in a world of wish fulfillment. They're doing it, and we need to be able to engage with them. We need to be able to support them in protecting them.
Well, can't teachers do that already, or healthcare workers do that? It's up to them to use their discretion. If a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old comes to them and says, look, I'm having sexual intercourse, I need some help, they're not going to turn them away, are they? Simply because the age of consent is 16.
Well, except because it's 16, there's an ambivalence and an ambiguity about it, which means it makes it more difficult for teachers and those in daily contact to give them clear signposting about where they can go to get help. But you're raising another issue here as well, which is we need to put more resource into sexual and relationships education in the schools, and we need to professionalise it so that it's really well done. And the negotiation of your first adult relationship in your mid-teens sometime is something that will set the record for the rest of your life. And at the moment, youngsters are getting the most incredible messages from pornography, from social media. What we're seeing is more physical abuse and mental abuse in relationships. We're seeing very strange expectations that are coming from pornography about what to expect from relationships. And this needs to be corrected. It needs to be corrected by being able to have open discussions, in a sensible environment.
And is that the key problem? Is that a lot of adults and parents just don't want to think about it? It's just awkward to even consider.
It's a very British problem, which we share with the Americans, this problem of not want... I mean, I always say in Holland, it's normal for mothers and their daughters to talk about sex over the breakfast table. It's not the case in this country, generally speaking. We still have this prudish hangover, which leads to all sorts of trouble. And we really, I mean, what I'm calling for here, which has been unfortunately billed on the front page of the Sunday Times, me calling for an age of consent of 15 is we need a debate about it.
And who should be involved in this debate?
Everybody needs to be.
For it to be effective.
And the youngsters themselves need to be involved. The parents need to be involved. Teachers who are having to deal with all sorts of issues in the classroom and don't quite know where they stand need to be involved. You know, we can't just close our eyes to what's going on and hope it'll go away. This is King Canute.
Interesting stuff.
John,
we had a lot
you.
of responses, as we said earlier.
Yeah.
John Ashton, from the Faculty of Public Health, thanks very much
Thank
indeed.
you very much.
Thank you. Well, John mentioned the front page of the Sunday Times, and it with the headline saying that there's a call to drop the legal age of sex to 15, and it is quoting Professor John Ashton, who we've just been speaking to. Now, the picture you're seeing there on the front page of the Sunday Times is Pope Francis, who's apparently inspired a surge in attendances and confessions in the Roman Catholic Church, reversing decades of decline. This just 8 months into the job.
The front page of the Sunday Express: catastrophe, it says, on A&E wards. Overcrowding now so bad that patients will die, warns top emergency doctor. And a picture there of someone who's thought to be another victim of the typhoon.
The Observer is taking a look at climate change. Of course, we're talking about charities also saying today that because of the effects of Typhoon Hainan, this has raised fears over global warming, and the Philippines is leading the attack on the eve of key talks. And let's also see, we can see the picture of Lily Allen there, and she's talking in today's Observer on body image. She's talking about babies and blurred lines. And then at the bottom, we're seeing the NHS competition policy is blocking improved cancer treatment centres. And this is one, actually, that our newspaper reviewer is taking a look at as well. A new one joining us on the paper to tell it. Join us on